Hey everyone, I'm in Milwaukee, came to visit a friend over the weekend. Sorry I didn't get my Decades of Action video up on Friday. Hopefully this will be sufficient. The Decades of Action Challenge series is one that I undertook in January, and it's going all year long. It's inspired by the Epic Film Challenge, which has been conducted by Forker Ball and Razor Wire Reviews on their channels. They were looking at a book called 1001 Movies You Must See Before You Die, watching the films, describing some of the entries, making videos about them. My source material is a little bit different. I'm looking at an essay series by Tom Breihan for avclub.com called A History of Violence, in which Breihan identifies and writes about what he considers the most important action movie of each year, starting with Steve McQueen and Bullitt in 1968, moving forward to the present. At the moment, I am on 2004, rapidly catching up to Breihan, who posts every 2 weeks, whereas I post every week, usually. 2004, his pick was The Bourne Supremacy, directed by Paul Greengrass. It was the second of the Jason Bourne movies to star Matt Damon. The original, of course, the first one was done by Doug Liman, and Doug Liman moved on to do Mr. and Mrs. Smith with Brad Pitt and Angelina Jolie, and so Paul Greengrass was hired to take over the series, and he directed the other two Jason Bourne movies to come after that, also starring Matt Damon. In the previous installment, Jason Bourne discovers that he is an assassin working for Black Ops operation for the U.S. government. Because he had amnesia, he couldn't figure out what the heck he was doing in Europe and why people were after him. But finally he has it figured out, and he and the woman Maria, who he encountered along the way, they are sort of secluded away from everyone else at the end of the picture. So the new movie starts in India, with the two of them living in isolation, more or less. And then Matt Damon spots someone who he knows doesn't belong there, someone who's come for him. And they end up getting chased, and Maria gets killed, which is a rather sudden thing to happen in the movie like this, seeing as how she was like one of the main characters in the last one. And this puts Bourne on a mission of revenge, kind of, to figure out who it is who's still after them and who's responsible for Maria's death. Meanwhile, there's another assassination in Germany on an operation being run by Joan Allen's character, Pam Landy, and she is looking into who was responsible for that, and they find Jason Bourne's fingerprints on the scene, which of course we know isn't actually something that he had anything to do with, seeing as how he was in India. So while she's trying to unravel what's going on, so is he, and their paths of course converge eventually, and you have that famous scene where he calls her while spying on her through a sniper rifle scope in the neighboring building. I was actually watching one of the Jason Bourne movies on cable one night, and suddenly had an idea to do a sketch with Luke Ryan for his 24-hour marathon, which is how that particular scene came about, if you saw Luke's marathon from a few weeks ago. So Greengrass brings basically this sort of cinema verite style, that he really wants everything to look kind of really spontaneous. There's lots of handheld camera work, oftentimes it's very shaky. A lot of people are really annoyed by that. And Breihan, in his article, was talking about how he liked the way that the fight scene took place. Basically, Bourne encounters a former Treadstone agent and has a conversation with him, but then it turns into a fight. But it's in this house, basically in the kitchen. And so there isn't a lot of need, I thought, for shaky camera work, seeing as how both fighters are basically planted in a house that's on a foundation that isn't moving anywhere, whereas the car chase at the end is, all these vehicles are moving frantically and crashing into other vehicles, and it's very chaotic. Breihan really liked the fight scene, but didn't like the car chase, and I had the exact opposite reaction. I thought the fight scene was much too shakily shot, but the climactic car chase is one of my favorites. It's one of my favorite chase scenes of all, and I think it really, really builds well. The music's great, especially when they go from the open streets into the tunnel, and things just get really, really intense at that point. If you've seen the Bourne Ultimatum, there's sort of a remake of this chase, and the Bourne Ultimatum really is kind of a remake of the Bourne Supremacy, which makes it kind of dumb in my book. I really don't like the third and fourth Jason Bourne movies all that much. The third one's stupid, and the fourth one is just kind of boring. There's not a lot of story progression there. Whereas, you know, with you have definitely something different happening between 1 and 2. 3 and 4 just seem like they're trying to replicate what happened in 2, in the Bourne Supremacy. Anyway, I like this movie very much. It's very good. Brian Cox, of course, and returns as his bureaucrat, his corporate bureaucrat who's involved in everything that's happening, and Gabriel Mann, who was working with Chris Cooper in the previous movie. He's in it as well, and Julia Stiles. Julia Stiles had, like, you know, almost a nothing part in the first Jason Bourne movie, but I think that her scenes were shot largely before she became more well known. The movie was delayed by a couple of years when it came out, and so for the subsequent movies, they made her role a lot more important in the Bourne Supremacy and in the 3rd and 4th movies, The Bourne Ultimatum and Jason Bourne, which came out last year. Yeah, some good moments, and really good performance by Matt Damon. He's gone from being bewildered to be sort of like super determined and stone-faced, and unfortunately, his character doesn't vary that much from the subsequent movies, but his motivation in the end of the Bourne Supremacy is really great, because what he discovers in his quest to figure out why the ops guys are still after him, he realizes that he went on a mission and ended up basically killing a couple and making it look like a murder-suicide. And so his objective at the end is to make sure that their daughter, who's still alive, knows that that didn't happen, that what she'd been told about her parents' death isn't true, and he wants her to know the truth. And that's his whole motivation for going to Moscow, and the whole reason why he gets in that car chase where he steals the cab in the end anyway. Oh, Karl Urban, I should mention Karl Urban. He's great in this movie. He's the guy, he's the primary asset that's after him. He's the guy who kills Maria in the beginning, and at the end he finds them again in Moscow and gives chase. And there's this great moment where the two of them are in vehicles and they're looking at each other, and Matt Damon's like, "I know you, I remember you from India," and then it's on. It is really, really on. Yeah, terrific movie, really terrific movie. A lot of people get sick of shaky cam. It works for the most part for me in this movie. Especially during that last chase. It's a very, very intense chase, and I just love it. It's one of my favorite chase scenes ever. And so that is the Bourne Supremacy. Next week, or actually later this week on Friday, hopefully, I'll be posting a video on a movie which, if I remember right, is called Kill Zone. It stars Donnie Yen. And we're finally getting into more movies that I actually have not seen before. The last one was First Blood from 1982, and now finally 2005. I thought it would be like Mr. and Mrs. Smith or something, but no, it's actually Kill Zone, a movie that I haven't seen, so that will be this Friday. I hope you'll tune in for that. Thanks very much for watching. As usual, the link to my Facebook page and to the playlist where you can find all the videos in this series is below in the video description. Thanks again for watching. I will see you next time.